And we will be here this afternoon. Just because we did some mopping this morning does not mean we're taking off this afternoon, right? So don't even go there. Okay, steering and suspension. 4, once the center mounting nut is removed from a steering wheel, the wheel should easily slip off the shaft. That depends on the vehicle. Believe it or not, some of them come off real easy. You'd be amazed. I mean, they literally do. They come off real easy. But actually, it seems like some people are just lucky. You know what I mean? So, whatever happens, is the thing shutting off? I guess it is. Okay. Okay, so that's actually as false as the answer key wants, but I'm telling you, some of them will come right off in your hand as soon as you take that off. The 2 main types of steering gear systems are rack and pinion and worm and roller. No, not really. Most passenger vehicles have rack and pinion steering. What is that? Have you ever seen a parallelogram steering system?
Yes, actually.
What did you see it on?
I think it was a van.
Yeah, basically that's the one with the idler arm and the pitman arm. That's a parallelogram system. You know, because it goes from one side to the other, it's making parallelogram. What's a parallelogram?
4 sides, all parallel.
I've also seen it on.
Well, that could be a rectangle, couldn't it? Huh?
You can.
Yeah.
I think in 03.
If you were going to draw, huh?
I think in 03, DMT Sierra uses it.
Yeah, the older vehicle back around the turn of the century, like these Crown Vickies, like the 98, the police car and all, it's got if it's got an idler arm and a pitman arm, and a link between them, it's got parallelogram steering.
Chevy 1500s have them too.
Yeah, they do. If they'll have rack and pinion or that kind of basically. Most passenger vehicles have rack and pinion steering, and that's true. Recirculating ball steering systems have fewer parts, therefore weigh less and require less space. That's as false as it can be. Those things are heavy. Pressure generated by a power steering pump may reach 2,000 psi.
Sure, why not?
That's actually true. Matter of fact, there's actually a gauge that you're supposed to use if you're really going to be a stickler for power steering. Nobody that I know of ever done that, but you can. The flow control valve in the power steering pump can be replaced. I've done that before whenever, you know, when one working right and all that. And in most cases, an electric motor drives a power steering pump. No. However, if you look under that hood, if I was going to tell you to go find the place where you check the power steering fluid, what are you going to do first? I actually pull, sometimes get all these cars that have electric steering on them and pull them around and say, check the power steering fluid for me. They scratch their heads and they look and they poke around. I'm going to look for a belt. You know what I mean? The belt and the pulley that's pulling the power steering pump. If it ain't got that, if I see an alternator and an air conditioner, compressor, and an idler, I know it's got electric steering. Okay, you know how the electric steering works, like on Cobalts? It's got a motor under the dash that helps you turn the steering wheel. You look at the rack and pinion down there, it ain't got no hydraulic lines going to it or nothing. It's just like manual steering. It's really something. Yeah, and basically it's got a little sensor telling it, you know, when you're turning the wheel and all that, and it's basically, and it runs this big, like a big giant power window motor. It's hooked up and it's got a module with it. It's pretty smart, and it talks to the network and all that. And there was a recall on some of them Cobalts because that steering didn't work right or quit working. Let's see, in most cases an electric, no, that's wrong. Front wheel alignment is necessary after any front end steering component replacement. That is true. You really need to do an alignment on the front end if you replaced any. As a matter of fact, if somebody has hit a pothole, like maybe that Dodge truck, you think it should be checked?
I checked the alignment already. I drove it down the road to see it was bad.
Okay. So you can drive it down the road and tell if the alignment's bad?
It didn't pull enough.
Okay, well, he's probably okay with that. As long as he doesn't wear his tires out really, really bad. Okay, number 8. All of the following are major components of a steering system except what?
Steering valve.
No.
Everybody like that answer? That, I would say, is likely to be correct. The housing that contains and supports the steering shaft is called what?
Steering column.
Steering column. Tie rod ends connect to what? Man, that's a stupid question. Yeah, ball socket. It's kind of a dumb question. Some of those didn't have ball sockets. They actually had those things put together with rubber that would stretch when you turn. And I always thought that was kind of weird to build it that way. Because if you had the wheels turned like all the way to the right, when you tighten these up, they would have a memory. And when you turn them to the front, they try to turn back to the right, you know. But that was very rare. Let's see. The number of degrees the steering wheel must turn in order to turn the road wheels 1 degree is called the what? What do you think?
Okay.
You're comparing one number of degrees to another number of degrees. What,
Ratio.
would that be the steering ratio? Okay, somebody tell me what toot is.
Toe out on turn.
Toe out on turn. That's a good answer. Okay. All of the following are components of a hydraulic power steering system except what?
Brad Bill kit, Royal kit.
Come on.
It'd be the reservoir.
What about a master cylinder?
One of them.
All right. Have any of you guys ever seen a power steering system that even though it had oil in it and the belt was tight, you didn't have any power assist?
Yes.
What'd you do about it?
Called the city.
You remember Willie's?
I've never seen it.
Willie's truck? You have seen it. Willie had good fluid and he had a noisy pump.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
right.
what was the cause of it?
What was that?
The screen in the bottom of the reservoir was clogged up with crud.
Dirty.
You can tell people about that too. At the parts store, they're going to come. Somebody will come there sooner or later. I think I need a power steering pump because I've got plenty of fluid in my reservoir, but I don't have power steering. I don't know. And it's going. Rah. Well, if you run it like that long enough, you destroy the pump because it's kind of starving and running dry. But if you get all that fluid out of that reservoir and you look down in there, there's a really fine screen. You got that? Remember that.
I remember him showing me that now.
Everybody in here that's already pulling wrenches and already got their hands under the hood when they're not around here needs to be paying really close attention. You're all really supposed to be paying close attention. But have you ever noticed that when you're working on cars every day, this stuff comes alive? If you're having to work on cars every day, and I don't know how many people that went through this program that I've seen making comments on Facebook and all that saying, I wish I had paid better attention when he was talking. I mean, I've been hearing that ever since I first started teaching. That one guy told me when he was graduating, and he wobbled his way through here. He's working at a shop right now, and that was back in 2002 when he graduated. But he says, I wish I could go back through that program again and pay attention. He said, because I missed so much by not thinking it was important to pay attention. So what I'm saying is you're going to lose something if you don't listen. And every worksheet you don't do is something you didn't learn or you didn't get better at, right? Okay, be really, really aware of that. Okay, now then. Before performing power steering pressure test, you must do all the following except what?
B.
What do you think? Everybody like that? B is a good answer. That means you don't want to run the vehicle so the fluid temperature becomes hot. Let me tell you something else real quick. You know when you're pulling these power steering pulleys off, sometimes you'll see power steering pulleys that are damaged and you got to get some from Parts House. You get some of those, with all due respect to whoever makes them, you get some of those that are made in China. The specs aren't quite right. They're too tight on the shaft. You try to push them on, you bust the pulley or something trying to push them on there. You can take a brake cylinder home and you can work it in there and make that a little bit not quite so tight and go in there. I've run into the same thing with quick connect heater hose connectors. You know those kind you put in the heater hose and you click onto the heater core? You get a Chinese-made heater core and Chinese-made heater core connectors. And on F-150, that thing's so far under there, you can't tell if it's on there good. And you'll shove it on there, and you can't pull it off, and you'll think it's on there, and then it gets hot and it blows the darn thing off going down the road. You know, and we just really got to thank Ford for the Triton engine that doesn't burn up because the water all got gone out of it, you know. But anyway, long and short of it is be careful about those. Something else. You see these power steering lines that have a hinged joint? You ever sell any of those? Right in the middle of the line, they got it's a hard metal line. They got a hinged joint. And my buddy over there that works over between here and Dothan, he said that he has every time he buys one of those lines, or I say that a lot of times when he buys one, if it says made in China, the first time he turns the wheel, it blows apart right there. The brand new line, just pops it apart, and it's just not really made good, you know. So be careful with that. Now, what components on your front end accessory drive have the largest pulleys? Huh?
Crankshaft.
Crankshaft's got a big pulley. What else has a big pulley? What has a small pulley?
Adler. Or
Adler's a small pulley, yeah, but what component that's actually being driven?
Alternator has a.
Yeah, why does the alternator have a small pulley?
To make it turn more for every little bit that it goes.
It's got to spin faster so it can do more work like that. But why do I put a big pulley on the power steering pump in the air conditioner? You ever think about that? Don't you always see a big pulley? A comparatively big pulley on the power steering? What is a big pulley gonna do that a small pulley's not gonna do? Why don't we put small pulleys on the power steering? Why don't we put a small pulley on the air conditioner?
You don't want it to go too fast and move the components too fast, right?
Well, it's not the speed as much as it is the power. We need a lot of belt to pulley contact, and we need a bigger diameter is gonna make us have more power. We're spinning that power steering pump, we're putting up maybe 2,000 pounds of pressure, so we need a big pulley there. You got it? That's really important. Also, you know, the power steering pulley, when you push it off and on, it's gotta be lined up perfectly or it'll chew up belts and spit them out. So be careful about that. I gotta tell you this stuff because I'm all forget it if I don't, okay? Everybody, look at him yawning over there. You ever yawn, you ever do a fake yawn and cause somebody else to yawn, that's all you do it?
All the time.
Yeah, you can do that. You can fake a yawn and they'll yawn because it's contagious, you know. All right, let's see. When performing a high power steering pressure test, a pressure gauge should be installed where? On the high pressure tube. You're not going to do a pressure test on the low tube. High pressure tube at the steering gear. We don't do power steering pressure tests here. I don't have the gauge. I don't know of a shop anywhere where they do it. Do you know of any? Let me ask you this about power steering. Have you ever seen in any owner's manual or anything like that where it gave you an interval for replacing the power steering fluid? Flushing the power steering system? Anybody know? You ever seen that? Well, you know, a lot of these oil change places sell that service. Flush your power steering. Okay, let me ask you this. I've decided that I want you to flush the power steering on my car because I don't like the color of that fluid. It's kind of ugly and dark and I want it flushed. You think there's a shop manual procedure for doing that?
No.
There is, believe it or not. You look it up in the GM shop manual particularly. What you do there is you take your return line and you run it into a container and you keep adding fluid while you raise the wheels up off the ground and turn the wheels back and forth and let the return line go into a container, you know, cap the nipple and all that. And since you may be Ziggy for a little while, you might tell him, hey, you know, why don't we sell some power? Okay.
I'm done as of yesterday.
Whatever happens, yeah, okay. All right. So, but long and the short of it is there is a procedure for doing that. And there's really nothing wrong with doing it. But the problem with doing it at the oil change places, some unscrupulous oil change places, and I'm going to underline that word, you don't know if they did what they said they were going to do or not. You know what I mean? They may charge you $70 to do that. But it ain't really hard to do. If you can get to that return line, you know, the return line is the one with the clamp. The pressure line is the one with the bolt. Well, you turn it back and forth, and you keep adding fluid until that fluid coming out the return line is clear. That ain't complicated. You got new fluid, right? Okay. Where airbags are concerned, and then we're talking about the airbags that blow up in your face, right? How are you supposed to store the airbags?
Hey,
You see that one up there on that steering wheel? That steering wheel up there's got an airbag on it, a live airbag. How's it stored?
Upside down.
The cover is up. You don't put it upside down.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what they told us at Chrysler? If you lit off an airbag with the cover facing the ground, they were testing those over there at the Chrysler plant, so they go like 5,000 feet in the air. I don't believe that. But the long and the short of it is, if that thing lights off and the cover is pointing toward the ground, it's liable to go anywhere. It's liable to go
yeah,
anywhere.
but you're not supposed to put it towards your body.
Well, you put it up if you're going to put it on the bench. That's the point. You know what I mean? If you put it the other way, what's it going to do? It's going to launch it like a projectile. I mean, would you rather put it upside down and have it hit something and go boom, come towards your chest at 90 miles an hour? Or if you lay it the other way, it's going to go boom, it's going to push down toward the bench, right? So you're always going to do that. That's going to be, you're also going to store in a cool, dry location. But you don't put them face down. You don't carry them with the face pointing towards your body. You wear short sleeve clothing when working with them. Of course, if you're carrying them, see, it depends on how close it is to it. You know, if you're too close to it, boom, you know, of course, it's not likely to light off anyway. I've never known one blow it up in somebody's hand. But they got an outside picture of what's at stake here, so we want to make sure nobody does that. Okay, that pretty well got past